Tonight we step barefoot into the steamy, whispering wilds of ancient Hawaii, where cooking dinner meant digging a hole, taming a fire, and hoping the gods were in the mood for pork. You crouch under a night sky full of stars so bright it makes your phone's flashlight feel embarrassed. The wind smells like salt, lava rock, and something faintly delicious, but that might also be your imagination. You're on the edge of a volcanic plain, heat rising from cracks in the earth, and your stomach growling louder than the nearby seabirds. You probably won't survive this, just FYI. One wrong step and you're in a bubbling steam vent. The ground hums like a giant sleeping beneath it. But don't worry, locals have been doing this for over 1,000 years and rarely get roasted. Emphasis on rarely. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You kneel in the red dust of the Big Island. Beneath your feet is not just dirt, it's history, heat, and dinner prep all in one. The ancient Hawaiians didn't mess around when it came to food. Out here, the earth itself helps you cook. The first thing you need: rocks. Not just any rocks. You need ili, smooth, dense, heat-resistant stones, usually basalt. These babies don't explode under high heat, unless they do, in which case you're in for a fireworks show and a new nickname, eyebrowless. You gather them carefully, eyeing each one like a suspicious potato. They need to be roughly the size of your fist. The bigger ones are too slow to heat, the smaller ones might go boom. Historians still argue whether certain stones were chosen for flavor or function. Some say the rocks leave a mineral note in the food. Others say that's just what burnt dirt tastes like. You hike back to camp, your arms loaded with rocks and your knees slightly regretful. Someone, probably a cousin, has already started digging the imu pit. It's about 3 feet deep and just as wide, shaped like a shallow bowl. You help line the bottom with more rocks, making a nest that looks suspiciously like a Stone Age hot tub. Then comes the fire. And not some cute little campfire. No, you're feeding this thing logs like it's a dragon that skipped lunch. The goal: heat those rocks until they're glowing red hot. You watch the flames dance and crackle while sparks fly like lazy fireflies. Every once in a while, one of the rocks hisses menacingly, and you scoot back just in case it's planning something dramatic. There's no instant thermometer here, only instinct, the crackle of the wood, and maybe the way the fire sounds different once the rocks are ready. Your elders say you'll feel when it's hot enough. That could mean anything from psychic vibrations to a mild sunburn on your shins. While you wait, someone tells a story. It's about Pele, the goddess of fire and volcanoes. She's watching, they say. If your rocks explode, maybe she's laughing. If your food tastes good, maybe she's pleased. You offer a small chant under your breath, just in case. By now, your clothes smell like smoke, your eyes are dry, and your stomach is doing the hula. The fire starts to die down, leaving behind a glowing pit of red, black, and shimmering white. Carefully, you rake out the charred wood, revealing your prize, searing hot rocks ready to cook a whole feast. You're not just warming things up here, you're about to use thermal inertia like an Iron Age physicist. It's hard to describe how alive the ground feels. There's something about cooking with earth that turns the whole process into a ritual. The imu isn't just an oven, it's a connection to the land, the ancestors, the gods, and your very hungry relatives. One wrong move and the meal is ruined. One right move and you're a hero until breakfast. You lower banana trunks onto the rocks. They steam instantly, releasing a vegetal hiss that smells like a jungle in a sauna. On top of those, more layers go in: banana leaves, tea leaves, woven mats. You're creating insulation, moisture, and a kind of culinary hug for the meat that's coming next. But that's for tomorrow. For now, the rocks are ready, the pit is hot, and you're one step closer to a meal that's been 1,000 years in the making. A fringe theory floats around the campfire. Some say ancient Hawaiians could hear when the rocks were singing, a sort of humming resonance that told them the imu was ready. No one agrees on what that sound is. Maybe it's just the sizzle of steam. Maybe it's the spirit of the food whispering, "Hey, don't overcook me." You yawn. The night is deep now. The stars pulse above, and the air carries a low, even heat. You realize that everything about this process, every spark, every rock, every chant, is an act of patience. Fast food this is not. And yet somehow, in that long wait, the food already starts to taste better. You wake up to the smell of damp earth and faint smoke still curling from the pit. The fire's out now, but the rocks beneath are radiating heat like an ancient secret. It's time to build the imu, Hawaii's slow-cooking miracle, basically an edible time capsule. You brush sleep out of your eyes with a palm leaf and start gathering more banana stumps. They're thick, wet, and heavy, like dragging around logs made of celery. You split them lengthwise and lay them directly on the hot rocks, hearing that satisfying pssh as the moisture hits heat. It smells like rainforest tea. This layer prevents your food from scorching, while also steaming everything like a giant underground spa. You feel like a caveman Martha Stewart. Or maybe a Gordon Ramsay with no shoes and mild heat stroke. Next comes the tea leaves. Long, waxy, and deep green, they're draped like blankets across the banana stalks. These not only insulate the food, but give it that unmistakable Hawaiian flavor, somewhere between grassy, peppery, and what is that delightful forest taste. Mainstream food historians agree that the tea leaf wrap helps trap heat and moisture, essentially turning the imu into a steam oven. You agree with your nose. Now, the main act, the meat. A whole pig, prepped and seasoned, carried over on a wooden board. You help lower it into the pit, laying it carefully in the center like a sacrifice to both your appetite and whatever cooking spirits might be watching. The pig's been rubbed with sea salt, maybe some crushed kukui nuts, and stuffed with hot rocks to help it cook evenly from the inside. It's not just food, it's engineering. Historians still argue whether stuffing the pig with rocks was purely functional or had spiritual significance. Some say it symbolized balance, heat within and without. Others think it was just the best way to avoid serving raw pork to 50 impatient cousins. Around the pig, you tuck bundles of sweet potatoes, breadfruit, and taro. Everything gets layered in like a puzzle, nothing wasted, every gap filled. Some households even added wild chickens or reef fish wrapped in tea leaves, tucked neatly beside the pig like +1 guests to a very warm dinner party. Now comes the part that makes you feel like a time-traveling sous chef. You start burying the whole thing. More tea leaves. More banana leaves. Then large burlap sacks soaked in water. Okay, sure, those are a more recent addition. In ancient times, they might have used woven mats of lauhala or kapa bark. Finally, you grab a shovel and start scooping back all that dirt, carefully packing it over the mound. You pat it down with your hands, sealing in the heat like a potter closing a kiln. Congratulations, you've made a literal underground oven. It's weirdly comforting, this buried feast. You sit back, sweating, soot-streaked, and proud. The earth hums softly under you. Somewhere deep inside, the rocks are still glowing. The meat is starting to cook. The steam rises, filling the air with hints of salt and leaf and something faintly delicious that hasn't even happened yet. Now, the waiting begins. Anywhere from 6 to 12 hours depending on how ambitious your menu is. You've got time. Time to nap. Time to wander down to the beach. Time to play a bit of konane, the Hawaiian board game that's like checkers but sneakier. Time to wonder, maybe for the 4th time, whether those little brown lizards you keep seeing are edible. Please don't. As the food slow cooks, You help prep the lauari, the rest of the meal. You mash some taro into poi, a process that takes rhythm, biceps, and the willingness to get absolutely splattered with purple paste. It's tangy, gooey, and slightly fermented, like yogurt's starchier cousin. Quirky fact: some old-school Hawaiians judged good poi by how many fingers it took to scoop, one finger poi being the thickest and most macho. 2-finger poi? Acceptable. 3 fingers? Honestly, just drink it. You hear laughter from the older folks under the holler trees. Someone's telling a story about a time they forgot to uncover the imu before a rainstorm. The meat came out poached, the sweet potatoes turned to mush, and one cousin still insists it tasted better that way. Another time, someone tried to speed up the cook time with a second fire on top of the dirt. The result? Pork charcoal. Tasty, but tragic. The imu isn't just about food, it's about slowing down. You can't rush it. You can't microwave it. You can't peek without ruining the steam seal. It's the culinary version of a trust fall. You put in the work, cover it all up, and just wait. But during that waiting, something else happens. You bond. Over stories. Over chores. Over shared hunger and shared jokes. You tease the kid who dropped a potato in the fire. You help grandma fold banana leaves just so. You argue lightly about whether the pig should have been marinated in guava juice or if that's just something tourists invented. You wonder, not for the first time, how anyone figured this out in the first place. Imagine being the first person to bury a pig in a volcano's leftovers and think, yeah, this'll probably be fine. You respect the courage. Or the hunger. By mid-afternoon, the mound is still warm, still steaming. You place your hand on the dirt, feel the thrum beneath. You don't need a timer. You just know, the way your ancestors did. The imu is doing its work. And your appetite is fully prepared for whatever comes out. You crouch beside the imu, eyeing the steam seeping out of the edges like a giant exhaling from beneath the soil. It's been hours, and you're sweaty, sun-kissed, and more than ready to eat something that isn't poi samples or saltwater by accident. But before you even think about unearthing the feast, you flash back to the most dangerous part of this whole operation earlier this morning, when you lit the fire and played your accidental audition for the role of crispy extra in a survival movie. See, getting the rocks hot enough to cook a pig for 10 hours? That's no small task. It takes serious fire. You and your crew, cousins, neighbors, probably a friend of a cousin's ex who just wandered in, hauled in armloads of ohia and kiawe wood, known for burning hot and long. The flames licked at the sky, a smoky orange beast fueled by logs and wishful thinking. But here's the twist: not all rocks are created equal. Pick the wrong kind and your imu turns into a game of hot rock roulette. Porous rocks like sandstone or coral, they look innocent enough, until they explode like snack-sized grenades. The ancient Hawaiians knew this. You, however, only kind of knew this and found out the hard way when one popped mid-fire and singed a hole through your dignity. Mainstream historians point out that basalt was the preferred stone for imu cooking, dense, volcanic, and lava-borne. It holds heat without blowing up half your party. It also has a certain I've been through things vibe that makes it feel right for cooking a whole animal. You inspect each rock like a jeweler with trust issues. Some fringe thinkers believe Hawaiians used to train their cooking rocks, seasoning them through multiple uses, claiming each batch of food left a trace of flavor behind, building something like stone memory. No one can prove it, but it's a poetic idea. The rocks remember. After the fire reached full roar, hot enough to make your eyelashes sweat, you watched the stones glow with a deep, angry orange. They crackled under the heat, sometimes shifting, sometimes letting out little pings like a chorus of dinner bells. Some elders say if you listen close enough, the rocks talk to you when they're ready. Others say you've just been staring too long at a very hot hole. You used long sticks to rearrange the rocks, spreading them evenly across the pit. This part. Dangerous. The wrong move, and you're doing the ancient Hawaiian version of a trust fall into murder. Someone handed you a pair of makeshift tongs, 2 palm branches tied together, and you tried not to look terrified. Steam blasted your arms. Your hair tried to leave your scalp. But somehow, you didn't catch on fire. Points for that. After the rocks settled in, you started building the layering system. That's when the tension kicks in. Because now it's real. This isn't a test fire. This is the real deal. IMU. The pig is waiting. The uncles are watching. The younger cousins are already holding plates and whispering how much longer every 6 minutes. There's no pressure except all of it. You lay down the first banana stumps, and the moisture releases that signature hiss again. One of the kids asks if the rocks are angry. You say yes. Hungry and angry. Hangry rocks. He laughs, which makes you feel like a slightly toasted culinary god. But then, boom. One of the rocks cracks with a sharp pop. Not a full explosion, just a reminder that yes, you're cooking with literal volcanic leftovers, and no, this is not a job for the faint of heart or the polyester clad. That's why the most experienced member of the crew always supervises the fire stage. In this case, it was Tutu Kaipo, who's somewhere between 70 and immortal, with forearms like taro roots and the attitude of someone who's buried more pigs than you've had hot showers. She taps one rock with her stick and shakes her head. No good. Too soft. It'll split in the IMU. She's right. You switch it out. You don't argue with Kaipo. Historians still debate whether the fire building process was ever ceremonial. Some sources suggest chants were sung to honor Pele, the fire goddess, before the rocks were placed. Others believe it was more practical, making sure everyone knew how not to blow up the village. You kind of think it was both. Now, hours later, the memory of that fire still clings to your skin, like a badge. Your hands smell like smoke. Your hair smells like smoke. Your left sock somehow smells like smoke. But there's something deeply satisfying about it. You made fire. You heated the rocks. You didn't die. It's a win. As you circle the pit now, the rocks you once feared have become quiet, loyal co-chefs. They've spent hours sharing their heat with meat, vegetables, and leaves, cooking from below with a patience you never knew food could have. You think about how this same method fed entire villages, how some IMU pits were used for generations in the same spots, buried beneath homes, beside heiau, temples, or near ancient gathering places. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows over the mound. The steam smells rich now. Meaty. Earthy. Like comfort. You place a hand on the dirt again. It's still warm. Still doing its slow, silent work. And deep beneath it all, your rocks, your crackling, dangerous, glowing, angry little companions have cooled just enough. But not too much. Just right for the final phase. You take a deep breath, feeling the last waves of heat radiating from the IMU as your hands hover over the mound like you're about to perform some sacred magic trick. And in a way, you are. It's time to uncover dinner, the moment that determines whether all your fire building, rock choosing, and eyebrow singeing were worth it. But this isn't a fast reveal. It's not like peeling back a foil lid or yanking open a microwave door. No, this is deliberate. Slow. Like a gift being unwrapped by someone who already knows it's going to be good. You start with the dirt, brushing, scooping, gently moving it away like you're uncovering a secret. A faint puff of steam escapes from a new crack in the mound, and someone behind you lets out a low, anticipatory ooh. The kids are bouncing on the balls of their feet. The uncles have put down their ukuleles. Even the dog, who's usually chasing chickens at this hour, is sitting perfectly still. You peel back the layers, first the wet burlap sacks, now cooled and heavy with moisture. Then the tea leaves, now dark and limp, their vibrant green dulled to a deep jungle brown. You're hit with the first real wave of smell. Smoky, herbal, meaty. Your brain forgets every other thought it was holding on to. It's just food. Good food. Banana leaves come next. They're singed at the edges, some almost melted into the starchy vegetables beneath. You use both hands to lift them aside, feeling the slick steam slip through your fingers. Underneath, the star of the show glistens in the flickering light, the pig. And it's perfect. Golden. Juicy. The skin slightly crisped in spots, but mostly soft and glistening, like it's been slow dancing in flavor for hours. The meat has pulled back from the bones. A gentle prod with your finger and it flakes apart, steaming, tender, almost unfairly delicious looking. You're half a second away from diving in face first. Quirky historical tidbit. In some old traditions, the first slice of the Ainu pig was reserved for the kahuna, or priest, as a sacred offering. If you took that bite without permission, legend says you risked stomach cramps, or divine side-eye for the rest of your life. Some modern Hawaiian families still make a small offering, just a morsel, to the land or the ancestors before anyone digs in. Tonight, someone quietly places a small piece of meat on a rock and murmurs thanks. You nod, because that feels right. And now, the feast begins. You and your crew start lifting the food out, carefully, reverently, like archaeologists who've discovered something rare and edible. The sweet potatoes are caramelized and soft, their skins peeling back like wrappings. The taro root is rich and earthy, dense enough to anchor your soul. Breadfruit, when cooked this way, turns into a buttery, starchy pillow. You don't even need utensils, just fingers, leaves, and gratitude. The pig is placed on a large wooden plank, its aroma trailing behind like a parade float. You start shredding pieces off with your hands, placing them on banana leaf platters. You nibble a piece. It falls apart on your tongue, salty and smoky with just a whisper of the tea leaves that cradled it. It's not just cooked, it's transformed. You joke that you should open a restaurant called Dirt and Fire. Someone laughs too hard and snorts taro through their nose. As everyone settles into the meal, you look around and notice something, the way the food slows everyone down. Nobody's rushing. No one's scrolling through their phone, not that you have signal out here anyway. Conversations start to stretch out. People are eating with their eyes closed, pausing between bites to sigh contentedly. You hear an elder tell a story about the time they dropped a wild boar into an imu with 3 fingers missing and it still came out delicious. No one questions it. Historians still argue whether the imu was invented independently across Polynesia or brought specifically to Hawaii by early voyagers. Some believe the method evolved separately across different islands. Others suggest it was passed down across centuries and thousands of miles, from canoe to canoe, each pit echoing the one before it. Either way, it works and has worked for longer than your country has existed. There's something primal and brilliant about it. No metal. No electricity. Just earth, stone, fire, and time. A buried box of transformation. And the best part, when you pull that pig from the pit, you're not just eating, it's a whole body experience. The smell sticks to your clothes. The steam curls around your face. The taste lingers on your fingers for hours. You lean back, belly full, brain fuzzy. Someone starts a chant, an old song about plenty, about giving thanks. The words are unfamiliar but comforting, like a lullaby you don't need to understand to feel. One of the little kids asks if you can make dessert in an imu. You consider this seriously. Technically, yes. Some people wrapped bananas in tea leaves, added coconut milk and sugarcane, and let them steam into gooey perfection. Other families placed whole ulu, breadfruit, near the edge for a slow roast that turned them almost pudding soft. A few experimental cooks these days have even tried imu brownies. No comment. You yawn. It's a warm kind of tired, the kind that comes from doing something hard and old and incredibly satisfying. You glance at the pit. Still steaming. Still alive. The rocks beneath now cool and blackened, their fire spent, for now. Tomorrow, you'll clean it out. Maybe keep a few of the stones. Maybe name one of them if it didn't explode this time. But tonight, you let it rest. You're stretched out now, belly round and heavy, head tilted toward a sky dusted with stars that don't even blink. Around you, the feast winds down slowly like the tide pulling back, leaving full bellies, laughing voices, and a few folks already drifting off mid-sentence under the trees. But for you, the night is far from over. You've got one more job: help clean up and wrangle the chaos that is feeding the village. See, you thought building the IMU was the hard part. You thought lifting a 100-pound pig and playing hot potato with lava rocks was the climax. But coordinating a Hawaiian feast? That's a whole different game. It's part food prep, part family reunion, part low-level tactical operation, with a healthy dose of chant, teasing, and borderline kitchen anarchy. You start by passing around woven plates of leftovers, because Auntie Malu is on a mission and no one leaves empty-handed. She can sense, from across a field, if you're trying to sneak away without your taro bundle. You're handed a banana leaf packet and a smile that feels like both love and threat. You nod. You accept. You hold it like a sacred artifact. Before the feast, things were even wilder. As the IMU cooked underground, the rest of the village had sprung into full pre-party action. Everyone had a role. You helped set up low tables carved from driftwood and palm. Some of the older aunties worked at a pace somewhere between gentle hurricane and professional catering crew, folding tea leaves like origami and scolding teenagers for sneaking too many samples. Over by the shoreline, a group had been chanting in unison while pounding poi with stone mortars called faku kuaiari. The rhythm was hypnotic: thud, pause, thud thud, pause, and by the third hour it was both musical and mildly threatening. Poi pounding is no joke. Your forearms still remember. Historians agree that Hawaiian feasts, or aharena, were intricate affairs involving not just food, but performance, ritual, and serious logistical coordination. They weren't just dinner, they were declarations of community, gratitude, and, sometimes, flexing. If the chief showed up to your feast and left hungry, social doom. One quirky record mentions a chief who was so obsessed with pork cooked in breadfruit leaves that he demanded it be served before the taro, which was scandalous at the time. The kitchen staff were horrified. The story ends with someone getting banished, although it's unclear whether it was the chef or the pig. Tonight, though, the mood is all warmth. Someone strums a slack-key guitar. There's a low chant weaving between the notes, a lullaby passed down through generations, soft as sugarcane. You help collect used banana leaves and compost them into a pit behind the cook area. Zero waste isn't a trend here, it's tradition. Nearby, a group of kids runs in circles with leaf crowns and faces sticky with roasted breadfruit. They're reenacting the great pig rescue of earlier, apparently turning the IMU into a monster and the pig into a brave hero. You don't correct them. History is flexible when you're 5. Auntie Lonnie catches your eye and points to a woven mat covered in fish bones and half-eaten sweet potato. Don't let the ants inherit this, she says, handing you a broom made of coconut fiber. You get to work. She smiles in approval, which feels better than dessert. Cleaning becomes rhythmic, soothing. You gather plates, fold mats, stomp out tiny fires that sprung up around the IMU like little rebels. You feel the night wrapping itself around you, warm and humming with stories. But before things wind down completely, it's time for the food sharing. Ancient Hawaiian culture revolved around generosity. If you had more, you gave more. No one hoarded. No one hid the good pig under the banana leaf pile. You see that spirit alive here, too, as plates are made for those who couldn't attend, kupuna too old to walk, families tending newborns, even the cranky neighbor who pretends he doesn't like anyone but always eats everything. You help wrap a portion of shredded pork and sweet potato into tea leaves, tie them with a strand of hibiscus fiber, and carry them down the path toward the village. On the way, you pass others doing the same, young and old, barefoot or sandal-clad, all delivering meals in the moonlight like quiet, edible blessings. Historians still debate whether these food-sharing rituals were informal or highly structured. Some say there were designated roles, like a culinary postal system. Others believe it was more spontaneous, based on relationship and need. Either way, the intent was the same: feed the people. By the time you return, the fire's mostly gone, just coals and memories now. A few folks are stretched out on mats, hands behind their heads, eyes closed in that sweet food fog. You join them, lying back, letting your muscles melt into the ground. Above you, the stars will slowly overhead. Someone starts humming again, an old tune, probably about fish or rain or heartbreak. Maybe all three. You can't tell. Doesn't matter. It fits. And in that moment, it all clicks. This isn't just about cooking. It's not just a hole in the ground, or a perfectly roasted pig. It's about the process. The people. The stories traded over tea leaves and laughter. The way a single meal can gather a community like firelight in the dark. Tomorrow, you'll go back to your regular life. But tonight, you helped feed a village. With fire. And rocks. And something older than recipes, older than names. You wake before dawn, eyelids sticky, mouth still tasting smoke and salt. There's a rooster nearby that thinks it's hilarious to crow directly into your soul. You groan. Your body is sore in places you didn't know could ache: your calves, your fingers, and somehow your earlobes. But then a breeze drifts past you from the ocean, and suddenly it smells like breakfast. Not bacon and eggs. No. Something better. Time for ocean seasoning. You shuffle toward the shoreline barefoot, stepping carefully over gnarled roots and sleeping cousins. The horizon is painted soft pink and gold, the surf murmuring against lava rocks like it's trying to keep secrets. But you're not here for secrets. You're here for flavor. Ancient Hawaiians didn't have spice racks. No paprika, no cumin, not even garlic. But what they did have was the entire Pacific Ocean, and they knew how to use it. The seasoning wasn't stored in jars, it clung to rocks, floated in seaweed, and soaked into drying nets stretched across the sand. You reach into the shallows and tug up a strand of limu kohu, a reddish seaweed that smells like the sea itself got a degree in culinary arts. It's pungent, salty, slightly bitter, and completely essential. The old folks used it like a flavor bomb. Wrap it with raw fish, mix it into poke, or chew on it straight like spicy sea gum. The limu dances on your tongue, making your mouth pucker just slightly. Now you're awake. Historians agree that seaweed was a major source of both flavor and nutrition in Hawaiian diets. There are dozens of types, each with different tastes, textures, and levels of chewiness. Some melt into broths. Others snap like ocean celery. A few taste like licking a mermaid's garden, but in a good way. You collect what you need, placing it in a basket woven from coconut fronds. Along the shore, you see Auntie Male scraping salt from a rock shelf where seawater pools have evaporated in the sun. It's like a natural spice mine, one that tides refill. She waves you over, showing you how to scrape gently so you don't ruin the rock. The salt is flaky and white, a little damp, like it's still whispering secrets from the sea. She lets you taste some. Your mouth does a small backflip. You ask how she knows when the salt's ready. She shrugs. When it stops sparkling, it starts seasoning. You don't really know what that means, but you nod anyway. Then there's the inamona, made from roasted kukui nuts mixed with salt and sometimes chili. It's nutty, oily, and slightly bitter, perfect for fish or to sprinkle over poi. The kukui tree, also known as the candlenut tree, is a jack-of-all-trades in Hawaiian life. Its nuts were burned for light, pressed for oil, and of course eaten after careful roasting. Important tip: raw kukui nuts can be a laxative bomb. You learned this the hard way last summer. Never again. Quirky fact: some families kept flavor bundles, small pouches filled with dried seaweed, roasted nuts, and crushed shell bits, which they'd rehydrate before meals. It was like having a pocket-sized flavor grenade. You kind of want to bring it back. As you make your way back inland, you spot Uncle Marka pounding fish in a stone bowl. He's making lomalomi salmon, the way his father taught him, salted salmon mixed with tomatoes, onions, and, if you're lucky, a pinch of seaweed or chili. The tomatoes and onions came after Western contact, of course, but the technique, all Hawaiian. You join him for a minute, gently massaging the fish like a sleepy house cat. He tells you about the old days, when seasoning came not just from the sea, but from smoke. Aimu-cooked pork tastes the way it does because of the tea leaves, the smoldering rocks, and yes, even the dirt. Flavor's not just in the food, he says. It's in the journey. Then he winks, probably because he knows you'll be thinking about that all day. Historians still argue whether the reliance on ocean ingredients was purely practical or deeply symbolic. Some believe the salt and seaweed represented purification, cleansing not just the palate, but the spirit. Others say, look, it just tastes good. Honestly, both are probably true. As the sun climbs higher, the feast's second wave begins. Leftovers are brought back out, but now they're jew's-head with ocean seasoning. You drizzle salt water onto cold sweet potatoes to revive them. Sprinkle inamona over roasted breadfruit for a nutty twist. Mix shredded pig with seaweed until it becomes something new, something ancient and alive all at once. Auntie Lonnie scolds you gently for using too much salt. We're seasoning, not preserving your insides, she says. You nod, again. Always nod. You sit down on a woven mat, the breeze carrying ocean spray and the scent of kukui smoke. Around you, plates are passed, bites are traded, laughter is louder now. The sea, it seems, has done more than flavor the food, it's salted the moment. Everyone's a little more awake, a little more chatty, a little more ready for round two. You chew on a strip of salty dried fish, sip water from a coconut shell, and think about how many flavors exist in just one tide pool. How many secrets the ocean's been holding in its brine. You don't need a cabinet full of jars. You've got waves and rocks and driftwood spice racks. And that's more than enough. You're lying under a holler tree now, hands behind your head, a belly full of pork and seaweed, when you hear a soft chuckle nearby. It's old Uncle Koa, who has exactly two modes, mischievous and asleep. Right now, his both eyes half closed, but smiling like he knows a secret. He turns toward you and says, you know the menehune probably helped with the Aimu last night. You blink. The tiny stone-building people. You ask. He nods like it's the most obvious thing in the world. You think that pig cooked that perfectly without help. He chuckles again, turns over, and promptly starts snoring. You stare up at the branches above you, trying to remember everything you've ever heard about the menehune. These aren't your average backyard garden gnomes. According to Hawaiian legend, the menehune are a mysterious race of small people, craftsmen, builders, and expert engineers who work in silence and finish impossible tasks before dawn. Mainstream scholars have long debated whether the menehune were purely myth or based on real historical groups. Some suggest they were early settlers, smaller-statured people who lived in the forests and mountains, eventually displaced or absorbed by later Polynesian arrivals. Others say the menehune are pure folklore, shaped by oral tradition and embellished over centuries. You're somewhere in the middle. You don't want to believe in magical minimasons, but also, How else do you explain the perfect steam pocket in last night's IMU? Auntie says she once left a half-finished fish net outside overnight and woke up to find it finished, better than she could have done herself. Grandpa swears his breadfruit tree produces twice as much fruit when he leaves a little offering of poi by the roots. And someone's cousin's uncle's nephew swears he once saw little red footprints in the ash near his IMU pit. Too small to be a kid. Too many to be a chicken. You wander over to the IMU site, now just a steaming dent in the ground. You crouch beside it, eyes scanning the dirt for signs. No footprints. No tiny tools. Just the smell of charred banana leaves and success. Still, you can't help but wonder. One fringe belief holds that menehune were the original inventors of the IMU. The story goes that long before humans built ovens in the earth, the menehune had mastered cooking with hot rocks, using elaborate systems of tunnels, vents, and steam traps, basically turning lava tubes into Michelin star kitchens. No proof, of course. But you do know that Hawaii is full of lava tubes, many of them large enough to walk through, and some of them suspiciously close to ancient cooking sites. You wander into the shade where a few others are talking story. Someone's sharing the legend of the Ale Coco fish pond, on Kauai, supposedly built overnight by hundreds of menehune stacking lava rocks with impossible speed and precision. And no one dared peek, they say. Because if you looked before sunrise, the menehune would vanish forever. You sip coconut water and file that under rules for life. Let the invisible chefs work in peace. Historians still argue whether these tales were metaphors, morality lessons, or perhaps early forms of cultural memory, a way to explain the mysterious or unexplainable. Why did that wall appear overnight? Menehune. Why did your fish disappear? Probably menehune. Why did the pork come out extra tender when you're pretty sure you forgot the tea leaves? Definitely menehune. Later that evening, when the fire's glowing low again and everyone's too full to move, someone suggests a story circle. You gather around, the IMU now just a warm memory between you, and take turns spinning tales. Most are funny, like the time someone tried to cook a pig with no rocks and ended up with a very disappointed dog. But a few are whispered. About seeing small shapes moving between trees. About soft tapping noises on the rocks at night. About catching a glimpse of something small, quick, and clever in the corner of your eye. You don't know what's real. You don't need to. What you do know is this. Something about this whole process feels bigger than just people and pigs and fire. There's a rhythm to it. A magic. Maybe it's just generations of wisdom baked into the dirt. Or maybe it's something else entirely. You yawn again, letting the sound of waves and laughter lull you into a soft daze. Somewhere behind you, Uncle Koa snores like a man who knows he didn't lift a finger all day and still takes credit for the perfect pig. Someone lays another mat down beside you. A little kid curls up with a tea leaf in her hand like a teddy bear. The menehune? Maybe they're real. Maybe they're not. But if they are, you hope they were proud of last night's IMU. And if they helped, well, you're definitely inviting them back for the next one. You wake again to that perfect blend of morning air and last night's fire, smoky, salty, and just a bit sweet. Around you, the clearing looks like a battlefield of full bellies and discarded tea leaves. But there's no rush to clean. Not yet. This morning is about something else entirely. Honor. You spot the elders sitting in a semicircle under the shade of a large breadfruit tree. They're quiet, sipping tea from cracked clay cups, their voices low and measured, like waves at low tide. Someone gestures for you to join them. You do, brushing dirt from your legs and trying not to look too sleep stupid. Because what's about to happen is serious. Sacred, even. Today, you learn the protocol behind the IMU. The kapu, the unspoken rules, the spiritual etiquette that turns cooking into ceremony. See, in ancient Hawaii, Food wasn't just nourishment, it was structure. Society itself was built around who could eat what, when, and with whom. The Ari Kapu system divided food along spiritual and social lines. Men and women often ate separately. Certain foods, like bananas, coconut, and pork, were reserved for men. Other foods were shared communally. The system was rigid, yes, but it was also deeply embedded in the rhythms of life. Historians agree that the Ari Kapu governed every part of the meal, from preparation to consumption. It wasn't just don't eat before the elders, it was don't touch the taro root until the appropriate chant has been sung. Even the placement of people at the meal could be symbolic, ranking by age, role, or ancestry. You shift uncomfortably. Last night, you definitely swiped a sweet potato early. You hope the spirits are in a forgiving mood. But one of the elders, Auntie Nani, turns to you and smiles like she just read your thoughts. Kapu is not about punishment, she says. It's about balance. Harmony. When you cook in the Aimu, you're not just feeding bodies. You're feeding stories. Feeding ancestors. You nod, slower this time. She goes on to explain how certain Aimu feasts were tied to specific ceremonies, births, harvests, or rites of passage. A boy becoming a man? That called for a whole pig. A canoe successfully returned from a long voyage? That got you squid, taro, and sometimes a chicken, if the gods were pleased. And death, well, that brought its own kind of feast. One not for celebration, but remembrance. A few feet away, someone unrolls a bark cloth bundle. Inside are tools, notched stones, carved spatulas, a fire-starting stick. Each one has a name, a story. You're told that before the Aimu, these would have been blessed. Not in some flashy, Hollywood way, just a few whispered words, a breath, maybe a splash of sea water or a flower tucked into a tool's crevice. Quirky fact. One tradition held that you had to face east when lighting the Aimu fire, to greet the sun and honor the day. Another required silence during the first spark, because too much chatter could confuse the flame. You wonder now if your cousin's off-key singing yesterday may have done spiritual damage. There's also debate among scholars about how strictly the kapu were followed in daily Aimu practice. Some believe every Aimu was sacred, others think the rules flexed depending on context, casual meal versus royal feast. One group of historians even suggests that Aimu building itself was once a form of offering, especially when used near heiau, temples. Your takeaway? It wasn't just cooking. It was communion. Auntie Nani hands you a tea leaf and says, "This one's for your aumakua." You pause. Your aumakua, family guardian spirits, might be a shark, an owl, a specific tree, or even a breeze that always arrives when you most need it. You don't know yours off the top of your head, so you just whisper something into the leaf and tuck it beside a rock. It feels right. Even if you're not sure why. Nearby, someone is preparing a small bowl of awa, a ceremonial drink made from the kava root. It tastes like muddy pepper water, numbs your tongue a little, and makes your thoughts feel like they're floating. It's not a drink for thirst. It's for clarity. For connection. You take a sip and feel something loosen inside your chest, like a knotted rope beginning to unwind. You start to understand that an Aimu feast isn't just a weekend barbecue with ancient flair. It's a layered experience, each part threaded with meaning. The fire is intention. The rocks are endurance. The food is memory. The act of sharing across generations, across belief, is the heart of it all. One elder tells the story of a feast where a visitor refused to follow protocol, ate before the opening chant. Later that night, it rained so hard it flooded the Aimu pit. A coincidence? Maybe. But everyone else started chanting a little louder after that. You think about all the little things you did without thinking. Stepping over banana leaves. Pointing at a bundle with your foot. Using your left hand to serve someone. These aren't big offenses, but they're reminders. Food is sacred, especially when shared like this. You're not just feeding yourself, you're part of something woven tight with history. The elders eventually disperse, slowly, like mist pulled away by the wind. One by one, they leave behind cups, mats, and advice. You remain seated, tea leaf still in your hand, thinking about balance. About how even now, in modern times, when the rules are looser and the phones have cameras, something sacred still hums in the dirt. You feel it every time the steam rises from the imu. Every time someone closes their eyes after the first bite. Even if you didn't do it perfectly, you showed up. You fed people. You listened. And that, maybe, is its own form of protocol. You wander a little deeper into the valley now, your steps slow, careful, partly because your legs are still made of poi and roasted pig, but partly because the path beneath you changes. The ground is softer here, mossier, and nestled into the earth, just past the edge of a fern-thick ridge, is something strange, a ring of stones. Old, worn smooth, half buried in leaves. You crouch beside it, brushing moss from the edges, and a shiver slides up your spine. This isn't just a rock circle. This was an imu. An ancient one. Maybe centuries old. Maybe longer. No plaque. No sign. Just quiet. You look around. There's no house here. No trail markers. No tourists with GoPros. Just wind, bird call, and the faint, spicy scent of old tea root. The forest holds its breath. Historians agree that imu pits like these are everywhere across the islands, hidden under houses, swallowed by jungle, buried in modern backyards. Many are long abandoned, but their presence tells a story. That cooking wasn't just for sustenance. It was for ceremony, for community, and sometimes, for history itself. You sit down by the stones, feeling the way they press into the earth, remembering heat. The rocks are cool now, but they once burned for hours. Days, even. Feeding whole generations. And maybe they'll do it again someday. It's humbling to think you're sitting in the exact spot where someone else once crouched 1,000 years ago, wiping sweat from their brow, whispering a chant, laying down a pig with trembling hands and a prayer. A curious bit of fringe lore floats to mind. Some families believe imu stones remember the meals they cook. That flavor seeps into their pores. That if you cook with wise stones, ones that have cooked many feasts, your food will taste better. There's no science behind it, just the soft certainty of tradition. But you glance down at these blackened basalt boulders, and you sort of believe it. You pull out a tea leaf from your bag, one you kept from yesterday's feast, still fragrant, and place it gently in the center of the stone circle. A gesture. A thank you. A hello. As you rise, you notice something else nearby, a shallow trench, overgrown with fern and red dirt. At first you think it's just erosion. Then you remember the stories about long, winding imu pits built to cook a lot of food. Not just one pig. Not just for a family. But for an entire Ali'is retinue. Chiefs didn't travel light. When an Ali'i, high chief, visited a village, the whole community came together to prepare. Multiple pigs. Taro by the canoeful. Fish dried and grilled and steamed in banana leaves. Some of the biggest imu pits ever discovered stretched over 10 feet long. Others were dug in parallel double imu setups, like a highway of steam and fire. There's debate among scholars whether these were only used for festivals or if they were part of regular offerings to the gods. Some even argue that certain imu were never for people at all, they were used purely for ritual, the food buried and left for the spirits. You don't know if this one was for people, gods, or both. But it feels important. Ancient. Like you shouldn't speak too loudly. You take a slow breath. Try to imagine the activity that once filled this clearing, voices calling out measurements in handfuls of rock and armfuls of leaves. Children chasing each other with coconut husks. Elders singing as the fire roared. A communal choreography long before dance had stages. Then something catches your eye, a worn path, leading away from the Aimu site, hidden between two hau bushes. You follow it. After a few minutes of careful walking, you emerge into another small clearing, and there it is, stone upon stone, stacked in crescent shapes, covered in moss but unmistakable. A heiau, an ancient Hawaiian temple. Or at least the bones of one. Crumbled, weathered, but still powerful. You feel your heart slow. Your voice lowers. This is no place for jokes or chewing sticks of taro. Aimu and heiau weren't separate things. In some ceremonies, the food cooked in the Aimu was part of the offering itself. Pigs were cooked whole and placed on altars. Bananas, taro, fish given back to the gods in gratitude or petition. And while no one does that here anymore, not in the old way, you can still feel the echoes. There's a chicken nearby, pecking through the leaves like it owns the place. It hops onto a stone, stares at you, and lets out a single, judgmental balk. You bow your head slightly, because honestly, it might be someone's aumakua. You linger for a while. Not because there's anything to do, but because the space asks you to. The air feels denser here. Not heavy, just meaningful. You run your fingers along one of the stones. Smooth. Warm from the sun. You try to imagine how many hands touched it before yours. How many voices rose in chant. How many feasts ended in stories that became legend. And just like that, you feel your own smallness. Not in a sad way, but in the best possible way. You're part of something massive. Layered. Beautiful. Your little feast, your hot rocks, your smoky pig, they're all echoes of something ancient. Timeless. You don't take a picture. You don't take a stone. You just breathe. Then turn, and walk back the way you came. The Aimu is behind you. Still warm. Still remembering. You return to camp with the dirt of centuries still clinging to your palms, just in time to see someone attempting the sacred art of reheating poi without turning it into wall paste. It's not going well. Oh no, you mutter, watching your cousin stir the purple mush like he's trying to beat a confession out of it. You're gonna anger the ancestors doing it like that. He snorts. What? It's just food. Just food. Those two words float in the air like a bad smell, and instantly Auntie Momi appears, summoned by ancestral offense like a culinary ghostbuster. She grabs the spoon mid-stir and shoots your cousin a glare so sharp it could cut dried squid. Poi, she says, gently now, reverently, is never just food. You sit down nearby because this, you realize, is your next lesson, what poi truly means. Made from the taro plant, kalo in Hawaiian, poi is more than a staple. It's family. It's identity. It's history mashed into a paste and eaten with the fingers, one respectful scoop at a time. You watch as Auntie Momi ladles water into the pot with practiced rhythm, coaxing the dense, sticky poi into a smooth, gentle swirl. She hums under her breath, maybe a lullaby, maybe a warning. Historians agree that kalo holds a central place in Hawaiian cosmology. According to tradition, the first kalo plant grew from the stillborn body of Loa, the elder brother of the first human. The living younger brother was then charged with caring for this plant, feeding it, respecting it, because it was, literally, his family. So, when you eat poi, you're not just eating. You're connecting. You're continuing a promise. One quirky tidbit you overheard last night: some elders say you shouldn't argue when poi is on the table. That it's disrespectful. That fighting over poi invites bad luck or family discord. One guy swore his cousin got stung by a jellyfish the very next day after shouting during lunch. Whether that's myth or coincidence, no one's willing to risk it. Mealtimes are peaceful. Or silent. Or both. You dip a finger into the reheated poi. It's warm, tangy, earthy. Not sour, just mature, like the flavor itself has gone through something. Fresh poi is soft and sweet. A day or two in, it gets stronger, more complex. Some like it that way. Some wrinkle their nose. You've grown to crave that little zing. It tastes like history. Around you, people begin preparing for a midday meal. There's leftover pork, of course, and grilled fish wrapped in leaves. But the poi, freshly stirred and served in a thick wooden bowl, sits in the center. Like an elder at the head of the table. Like an unspoken rule. There's no cutlery. You use 3 fingers, never just one. That's for babies, and scoop a mouthful. You let it sit on your tongue a moment before swallowing. It doesn't scream with flavor. It's subtle. Steady. Like a drumbeat in the background. But somehow, it fills a space you didn't know was empty. You glance around. Everyone else is doing the same. Dipping. Swirling. Eating slow. It's like a ceremony no one explains but everyone knows. Scholars still debate how poi fit into the social rituals of the Aimu feast. Was it just a base? A filler? Or was it the real centerpiece, with the meat and fish playing supporting roles? Some evidence suggests poi was the first food placed in front of the Ali'i chiefs, symbolizing not just nourishment but lineage. You can't help but agree. Pork is delicious. Poi is sacred. You remember a story Uncle Liko told once about a family that ran out of poi during a big gathering. They tried to serve rice instead. The grandmother left. Just stood up, walked out, and didn't return until the next season. She said the feast had no soul, he'd said. Only starch. Someone passes you a piece of dried palu mackerel and you dip it into the poi. The contrast is sharp and soft, salty and grounded. It's like pairing a memory with a whisper. You realize you haven't spoken in several minutes, but somehow you've said a lot. As the meal winds down, a little girl drops her bowl, and it rolls across the mat, splattering poi onto someone's bare foot. Everyone freezes. There's a moment, just a moment of silence. Then the auntie whose foot got baptized in taro chuckles softly. At least it wasn't the 3-finger scoop, she says, wiping her foot with a leaf. Laughter bubbles up. The tension breaks. But still, someone scoops the spilled poi into a leaf and sets it gently at the base of a tree. A quiet offering. A little apology to lower. After the meal, you help clean again, this time more carefully. You rinse poi bowls in cool water, avoiding soap, and dry them with soft cloth. You feel yourself slowing down, matching the rhythm of the ancestors, of the land. Every movement deliberate. Later, you find Auntie Momi sitting with her knees up, watching the sea. You thank her for the poi, the lesson, the patience. She shrugs like it's nothing. Just remember, poi feeds more than your stomach, she says. Feed it back. You don't ask what she means. You just sit beside her, silent, listening to the ocean and the breeze that always arrives when it's supposed to. The afternoon air has shifted now, slower, thicker, golden. That kind of sunlight that makes everything look a little nostalgic, like it's already a memory before it even ends. You're sitting under a kukui tree, your hands sticky with coconut milk and your feet crusted in red dirt, when someone calls out your name. Get up. We're making laulau. You groan. Not because you don't want to, because you know exactly how much work this involves. Laulau isn't a snack. It's a commitment. But also, it's worth it. You join the others near the edge of camp, where baskets of ingredients have already been laid out. Tea leaves stacked in bundles. Taro leaves glistening like giant green hearts. Slabs of pork, pieces of butterfish, and the faint aroma of sea salt clinging to everything. Making laulau is a team sport. Everyone takes a station. Someone's cutting meat into precise cubes. Someone else is rinsing the leaves, one by one, checking for bugs and torn edges like an art director inspecting props. You're handed a stack of tea leaves and shown how to fold them again. The trick isn't brute force. It's the art of the tuck. First, you wrap the pork and butterfish in the soft, edible taro leaves, luau leaves, they're called, and then you cradle the bundle inside 2 tea leaves, crossing and folding like origami powered by lunch cravings. Finally, you tie the whole thing with a string of dried banana fiber. It looks deceptively simple. Like a tidy green pillow. Historians note that laulau was one of the oldest forms of portable, pre-packaged Hawaiian food. Before Tupperware, before lunchboxes, you had laulau. It kept food moist during long steam cooks and could be buried in the imu or boiled in a pot. Versatile. Compact. Delicious. It's the ancient Hawaiian version of a Hot Pocket, with way more respect and zero cardboard. As you wrap, you fall into a rhythm. Scoop, fold, tuck, tie. Scoop, fold, tuck, tie. Conversations hum around you, light teasing, family updates, someone claiming their laulau is chubbier than yours, and that's a good thing. It's meditative. Calming. Everyone focused on their hands but connected through laughter. Then comes the big moment. Into the imu they go. You carry your laulau bundles carefully, cradled like newborns, and lower them into a new set of tea leaves already steaming inside a freshly heated pit. They're placed gently, precisely, because misaligned laulau equals uneven cooking, and nobody wants to bite into raw butterfish. You seal the pit again, rocks, burlap, leaves, dirt, and it's back to waiting. But it's a different kind of wait this time. You already know what's coming. That fragrant plume of steam. That soft unraveling of green to reveal meat so tender it falls apart if you think too hard at it. As the pit smolders, you learn that laulau isn't just about the ingredients, it's also about what's not inside. No sauces. No spice blends. No marination. It's all flavor through simplicity. Salt. Smoke. Leaf. Time. That's it. And yet, the first bite of well-made laulau is like a conversation between your tongue and your soul. It says, relax. You're home. Auntie Liko tells you a weird old tip. Some cooks used to whisper to their laulau as they wrapped it, soft encouragements, gentle promises. Cook well, they'd say. Stay together. It's part superstition, part affection. But when you think about it, it makes sense. You're trusting those little bundles to do a lot under pressure. A kind word couldn't hurt. There's some scholarly debate about the origins of laulau. Some say it began strictly as a method for cooking pork. Others argue it was more diverse from the start, with fish, sweet potato, or even chicken making regular appearances. Modern versions include tofu, beef, and vegetables. But everyone agrees on one thing: tea leaves are non-negotiable. Not for eating, but for protecting. They trap the steam, add a whisper of flavor, and hold everything together like a leafy hug. As evening rolls in, the imu is opened once more. You gather around with the others, the scent punching you softly in the face the second the tea leaf bundles are lifted out. Each one glistens with steam, the leaves browned and crisp at the edges, the insides hot and heavy with promise. You tear into yours with reverence. The taro leaves have melted into velvet. The pork is impossibly tender. The butterfish adds that ocean note, rich and deep like a lullaby sung by a whale. You eat slowly, savoring every bite, knowing that this flavor came not from complexity but from care. You glance around at the others, elbows deep in laulau, eyes half closed in pleasure. Someone lets out a contented grunt. Another murmurs, "This is the one. This is the one." No one disagrees. By the time you finish, you're full in the truest sense, not just in your stomach, but in your chest, in your bones. Because this isn't fast food. This is past food. Cooked the way it was cooked long before you, and hopefully, long after. You help clean again, of course. Tie up the tea leaf scraps. Wash the bowls. There's a rhythm to it now. Scoop, fold, tuck, rinse. Like a song you're finally starting to remember the lyrics to. And as night creeps in and the stars return, same stars that watched over the first laulau, you feel something shift inside. A sense of pride, of place, of deep, green satisfaction. You made something. You shared it. And it was good. You wake to the sound of drums. Not loud ones, nothing wild or warlike, but steady, low, and pulsing like a heartbeat you can hear with your feet. It takes you a second to realize it's not someone playing an instrument. It's someone pounding taro. Rhythmically. Lovingly. It's the sound of life turning back into poi. You pull yourself up from your mat, your back cracking like undercooked kalo, and shuffle over toward the pounding station. There, in the golden hush of morning, Uncle Keel is sitting cross-legged beside a large papa kuaiari, a traditional wooden board, wide and well-worn, shaped by decades of use and the occasional impatient teenager trying to speed things up. He lifts his faku kuaiari, the poi pounder, and brings it down in a slow, even motion. Thud. Shift. Thud. Shift. He's not even breaking a sweat. You could swear his eyebrows are doing more work than his arms. This, he says, is the final blessing of the Aimu feast, the transformation of leftovers. Because in Hawaiian tradition, you don't waste. Especially not taro. You sit beside him. He nods to the cooled, cooked kalo root waiting its turn, and hands you the extra pounder. It's heavier than you expect, with a smooth base and a perfectly balanced weight. It's not a tool, it's a dance partner. Thud. You miss the beat. The root bounces like an insult. Easy, he says. You're not angry. You're guiding it. So you try again, finding the rhythm. The root softens beneath your hands, flesh turning from firm to forgiving. Each strike isn't about smashing, it's about coaxing. Persuading the root to release its starch, to surrender to the paste. You think, weirdly, about forgiveness. About patience. This feels more like prayer than prep. Historians agree that taro pounding was not only culinary, it was symbolic. A ritual act. A job often passed down carefully, deliberately. Some families even carved names into their boards or passed down specific pounders for generations. The board you're using now has faint grooves like tide patterns. You wonder how many hands have touched it. How many stories are baked into that wood? Uncle Keel tells you something strange. Some say the board remembers. You glance down at the papa kuaiari, half expecting it to blink at you. But no, it just holds steady beneath your effort. It does seem to hum though, as if every strike sets off a vibration in something older than wood. There's an old belief that pounding poi is best done with intent. If your mind is cloudy, the poi will be lumpy. If you're angry, it will sour faster. You don't know if that's literal truth, but you definitely know Auntie Pua has the best poi in the family, and she's also the calmest human you've ever met. Around you, others begin joining in. More boards. More pounders. A low, communal beat. It becomes music. Not in the sense of melody, but meaning. A heartbeat made of stone and starch. Quirky detail. Some kupuna used to say the pounding rhythm was how ancestors recognized the living. That when they heard the beat, they came closer, just to listen. You pause mid-pound for a moment and glance up. The wind stirs. A leaf falls. Could be coincidence. But you resume pounding anyway, slightly softer. Once the poi reaches the right consistency, sticky, silky, with a slight bounce, you gather around to taste it. No salt. No sugar. Just water and root and thyme. It's perfect. Almost floral. Slightly tangy. Comforting. You don't devour it. You sip it, almost. This poi isn't a side dish. It's the soul of the meal, extended. Poi left over from yesterday's feast is like a memory with flavor. Each spoonful reminds you of the fire, the laulau, the laughter, the song. And then, just like that, someone brings out the scraps. Not for you. For the land. Back in the Aimu pit, someone has laid out banana leaves and placed a few scoops of poi, a bit of roasted pig, and a piece of sweet potato. It's not trash. It's not leftovers. It's an offering. You carry it out with a small group, away from the main clearing. Past the tea leaves. Down near a stream. There, you place it beneath a large high tree. Someone hums. No one speaks. The food is left, not as waste, but as respect. For the gods. For the ancestors. For the land that gave it. Historians still argue whether this ritual offering was common practice or reserved only for sacred occasions. Some claim every meal had a portion set aside for the aumakua. Others think this evolved later, blending native belief with new spiritual forms. Either way, you feel it makes sense. You've taken so much from the earth. Giving back feels right. On the way back, you pass a small patch of young kalo. The leaves shimmer in the sun, heart-shaped and radiant. Someone leans down and places a muddy thumb on the stem. Mahalo, they whisper. Back in camp, the pounding is done. Boards rinsed. Pounders cleaned. The Aimu pit now silent and cool. The feast has officially passed from now into then. And yet, you don't feel sad. You feel sustained. You helped. You learned. You pounded poi. You didn't burn the laulau. Not bad for someone who couldn't tell a tea leaf from a banana wrap 2 days ago. As the group begins to scatter for naps, swims, or very slow canoe paddles, you sit quietly beside the papa kuaiari. You rest your hand on the board. And for just a moment, you swear you feel a little pulse beneath your palm. The tide's out now, and the reef's exposed like a secret someone whispered too loud. You walk along the shoreline barefoot, dodging sun-warmed rocks and the occasional suspicious crab. The air is briny and thick with the scent of limu, seaweed, and something else, something sweeter. Smoke. Wood. Heat. Not from the Aimu this time. You round the bend and find a small, makeshift grill set up near the driftwood piles. A group of kids is gathered around, their uncle showing them how to cook fish right over the coals. No pit, no banana leaves, just salt, smoke, and attention. This is the other side of Hawaiian cooking, the casual genius. The day-to-day wisdom passed through repetition, not ceremony. One kid holds a sharpened stick skewered through a reef fish. This the same as Aimu? She asks, brow furrowed. Her uncle laughs. If the Aimu is a concert hall, this is busking. Same music, different vibe. You sit and watch as they roast fish over glowing kiawe wood. The smoke smells different, sharper, hungrier. You're told that kiawe burns hot and fast, great for quick sears. Not everything has to be buried for 12 hours. Sometimes, flavor shows up fast. You just have to catch it before it runs. This kind of cooking is old, too, maybe even older than the Aimu, at least in the context of the Pacific. Some scholars argue that Polynesians likely began with open-fire cooking methods before developing the earth oven. Others suggest it happened in tandem, with certain foods always being better suited for one style over another. You ask about the fish. It's moano, a goatfish, lightly salted, no oil, and laid skin down over the coals until it sizzles and sings. They don't flip it. They wait. Then they lift it off, wrap it in tea leaves just long enough to rest, and hand it to you. It flakes apart in your hands. Tastes like simplicity with a crunch of ocean. You hum without meaning to. Quirky tidbit. There's a saying that if you burn the skin of the fish too much, the gods will send rain just to wash the ashes off the reef. It's a joke. Kind of. But everyone cooks carefully, just in case. You ask the uncle about seafood in Aimu. Could they do that? Sometimes, he says. But not too long. You don't bury fish the same way you bury pork. It disappears. Turns out, fish cooked in Aimu has to be done with precise timing and layering. Wrapped tightly in tea, nestled in cooler corners of the pit, often added after the heavier meats have had their turn. Otherwise, it just turns to fishy goo, which is not a phrase anyone wants near their dinner. There's still debate in historical circles about how central seafood was to Aimu-based cooking. Some believe it was a staple, used often but in smaller portions. Others argue it was a rare treat, only used when the catch was huge or the celebration big. One archaeological find revealed fish bones deep inside ancient Aimu pits near the coast, alongside evidence of mollusks and urchin shells. You imagine a feast where land and sea truly mingled, pork, poi, and grilled hi'i, octopus, all steaming together beneath the dirt. Here, though, at the edge of the sea, the fire is open and the rules are looser. A few sweet potatoes are tossed in beside the coals. Someone's scraping coconut over a piece of grilled breadfruit. It's like an outdoor potluck invented by hunger and sunshine. You're handed a chunk of sea salt to crumble over your fish. The crystals are rough, formed in a tide pool basin the week before. Sun-dried, someone says. Like me. The meal is fast, gone in minutes. But the satisfaction lasts longer. As the kids run off to splash in the tide pools, you find yourself thinking about balance again. The Aimu is slow. This is quick. Both are ancient. Both feed you. One is ceremony. The other is joy. And sometimes, that's the secret of Hawaiian food. It doesn't try to impress. It just wants you to be present. To stop scrolling. To chew slowly. To taste the salt and the smoke and the story in each bite. You look down at your fingers, now glistening with fish oil and salt. No napkin. You rinse them in the sea. And there's something about that, eating with your hands, licking your fingers, rinsing in the same water the fish once swam in, that feels perfect. Like the circle closed. Like you were never meant to eat in a rush, hunched over a desk. You were meant to be barefoot on lava rock, grinning into the wind, chewing something delicious while a crab judges you from behind a tide-worn shell. Back at the camp, the Aimu is cooling again. Just stones now. Steamless. But down here by the shore, the fire crackles, the fish sizzles, and the memory builds. Not every meal needs to be epic. Some just need to be shared. You sit alone now, just a little away from the firelight, watching as the stars layer themselves across the velvet sky like someone spilled sugar over black stone. It's quiet, only the gentle rumble of distant waves and the occasional rustle of palm leaves whispering secrets to each other overhead. Everyone else has drifted into sleep or soft conversations. The fire has turned from flames to coals. And you're thinking about rocks. Hot ones. Heavy ones. The kind you've now watched disappear into an Aimu and return hours later, transformed by fire, ash, and the weight of tradition. You walk slowly back toward the pit, your bare feet silent in the cooling sand. The rocks are scattered now, resting where they were tossed from the Aimu's belly. Some are cracked. Others have melted slightly. A few are just gone, crumbled into sand and smoke. You crouch and pick one up. Still faintly warm. It's strange to feel so much emotion over something so basic. A rock. But these stones have fed families, built relationships, grounded ceremonies, and literally held up history. Not all stones are created equal, of course. Ancient Hawaiians were particular about which ones to use in their Aimu. Dense, volcanic rock like basalt was prized for its ability to withstand extreme heat without cracking. Lightweight, porous stones? No good. They'd shatter under pressure, sometimes explosively, and ruin the whole cook. You picture early chefs learning this lesson the hard way and quietly pretending that pig was supposed to come with crunchy mineral topping. Historians confirm that some stones were even reused over and over, passed down through generations. A family might have their favorite Aimu stones, ones they trusted like old friends. And just like old friends, when they broke, it wasn't just a mess, it was a loss. Uncle Manu told you earlier today that in some families, if a good Aimu rock finally cracked, they'd bury it. Put it back in the earth it served, he said. Like a retired warrior. You thought he was joking. But now, holding this fractured stone, you're not so sure. There's a fringe belief, too, that the very best Aimu rocks aren't found. They're given. Revealed during dreams, or stumbled upon while fishing, or spotted glinting weirdly in a river. One story you heard involved a young boy who found the perfect Aimu stone shaped like a shark's tooth. It cooked dozens of pigs before eventually vanishing during a storm. The family never found it again. The next season, crops failed. Coincidence? But the uncle telling the story sure didn't think so. The science backs up the importance of stone choice. Basalt heats evenly, cools slowly, and releases its heat gently into the food above it. It doesn't burn, it embraces. You like that. It feels true. You walk the perimeter of the old pit, noticing how it's shaped like a shallow bowl. That was no accident either. The contour allows for even heating, better steam circulation, and efficient rock placement. The Aimu, it turns out, is a design marvel, elegant in its simplicity, profound in its effect. Scholars debate how much of the original Aimu engineering came from experimentation versus divine inspiration. Was it trial and error over generations? Or did the earliest voyagers from Polynesia bring this knowledge fully formed across thousands of miles of open ocean? No one knows for sure. But either way, the fact that the system changed so little over centuries says a lot. When something works, it works. You find a rock that's still warm and slightly smooth in the hand, scorched black at one edge, but solid. You sit with it for a while, just holding it, listening to the night breathe. And that's when you notice the pit has changed too. It's quiet now, yes, but not empty. Something lingers. The memory of steam. The echo of laughter. That pig, now long eaten, somehow still present in the shadows and stone. You can almost hear the faint sizzle still trapped in the rocks. You place your warm stone back in the pit, nestling it where it can rest. And then you stand. There's an unexpected pang in your chest. Not sadness, exactly, just recognition. The Aimu isn't just a cooking method. It's a metaphor. You dig a pit. You prepare carefully. You build heat. You wait. You trust. You open it up and something has changed. Food, yes. But also people. The way they see each other. The way they share. The rocks do the heavy lifting. Quiet. Unseen. Essential. You think about all the people who've passed these traditions down, not because they had to, but because they chose to. Because cooking in an Aimu isn't fast, and it's not convenient. It's slow, messy, labor-intensive. It demands patience, humility, and an intimate relationship with the land. In today's world of delivery apps and microwave magic, the Aimu is almost rebellious. A reminder that some things are worth doing the long way. You walk back to camp under the stars, the scent of smoke still woven into your hair. The fire pit flickers softly, just enough to warm your face. And suddenly, you feel an odd but perfect blend of exhaustion and purpose. You're not just full, you're rooted. Cooked low and slow into something stronger than you were before. Tomorrow, the pit will be covered. The stones will rest. The fire will fade. But you'll remember. You wake before the sun does. Not on purpose, your body just knows. It's that gentle pull, that quiet inner clock that says, "Hey, get up, you're about to miss something." And for once, you listen. The camp is hushed, scattered with soft snores and rising steam from someone's forgotten tea. You pull on a sweatshirt, still faintly smoky from the Imu feast, and head toward the shoreline where a few silhouettes are already moving like shadows on the edge of the world. You're not sure what you expected, more rocks, more cooking? But no. Today is about something quieter. The final part of the ritual. The cleanup. The care. The remembering. You're handed a shovel. A broom. A bundle of tea leaves. No one says much. Just nods and starts. Together, you begin to close the story you've been writing with dirt, fire, and food. The Imu pit, still warm, is carefully dismantled. Not destroyed. Just unbuilt. The top layer of dirt is peeled back and sifted. Burnt tea leaves, now crisp and brown, are bundled and set aside. The stones are cooled with water, inspected for cracks, sorted gently into keepers and retirees. Some are still solid, ready for the next feast. Others, they've done their job. There's a designated area for those, the stones too cracked or warped to reuse. They're laid out in a circle beneath a hau tree. Not thrown. Not dumped. Just placed. Like elders gently nudged into a long nap. One of the older aunties whispers as she lays hers down, "Mahalo for your work." And that's the thing. Every part of this process, every part, is filled with that same reverence. It's not just a cookout. It's a legacy. A conversation. A full circle dance that doesn't end with dessert but with gratitude. You sweep out the pit slowly, letting the broom follow the curve of the earth. Tea leaf fibers in your hands, sweat on your brow, morning light finally beginning to streak through the canopy above. It smells like ash and something sweet. Maybe guava blossoms. Maybe memory. Historians often note that Imu pits weren't always left open. After big feasts, they were usually recovered. Not just to keep things tidy, but to close the cycle. To return the land to its resting state. It's not just cleanup, it's respect. And maybe a little superstition, too. There's an old belief, still whispered today, that if you leave a used Imu pit uncovered, the spirits might get curious. Wander in. Linger too long. Better to close the door. Keep things tidy. You pat the earth down with your bare hands, brushing the final bits of ash into place, until the only sign of yesterday's feast is a faint discoloration in the dirt and a warm spot beneath your fingers. The firewood pile is sorted next, what's still good, what's termite food. Stones are stacked by size. Banana leaves are bundled for compost. The entire site returns to its natural rhythm, slowly shedding the evidence of what it held. And yet, you can still feel it. The warmth. The steam. The laughter. The stories that slipped out between mouthfuls of pig and poi. One last task remains, taking the leftovers, what little is left of the laulau, the fish, the cooked kalo, and walking it out to the forest line. Not to waste it. To offer it. Same spot as before. The high tree stands silent and waiting. You leave the food carefully, along with a flower or two, and a small piece of breadfruit wrapped in a tea leaf. It's not an apology. It's a thank you. A gesture of completeness. One final acknowledgement that the land gave, and you received, and now it's time to balance the scales. Scholars still argue whether these offerings were always this formal, or if they evolved over time, folding in elements of new religions, adapting to modern habits. But one thing remains clear: the relationship between people and land in Hawaiian culture is never passive. It's active, participatory, mutual. You walk back slowly, letting the last of the morning birdsong wash over you. There's no rush now. No feasting deadline. No fire to build. Just the satisfaction of completion. You reach the camp as others begin to rise. Someone yawns. Someone stretches. Someone puts on water for tea. The rhythm shifts back to normal life, but something in you has changed. You're not just someone who watched a feast happen. You were part of it. You dug. You wrapped. You cooked. You waited. You pounded. You shared. And through it all, you listened to the land, the people, the stones, the quiet. That's the real secret of the Aimu. It's not about what goes in, it's about what comes out. Connection. Patience. Memory. You sit by the now covered pit, steam long gone, but warmth still rising faintly through the dirt. You exhale. You smile. You whisper, mahalo. And now, it's time to rest. The Aimu is cold. The fire's gone out. The tea leaves have all returned to soil, and the stones are silent again. You're lying under a ceiling of stars that haven't moved in 1,000 years, listening to waves that have told the same bedtime story since long before you were born. Your body is tired, but in the good way. In the full way. You've walked through ash and steam, through tradition and taste, and found your place in the rhythm of something older than memory. Can you still smell the smoke on your skin? Can you feel the warm stone in your hand? Good. Let that weight pull you gently downward. Let your thoughts slow like a rock cooling under earth. Let the last images flicker through your mind like firelight on the leaves, the folding of tea, the beat of the pounder, the scent of roasted kalo, the laughter around a bowl of poi. Let your breath match the rhythm of those ancient drums. Let the dark wrap around you like a leaf bundle, warm, safe, simple. There's no rush now. No more work to do. The feast is over, but the story remains. It lingers in your bones. Soft, smoky, sweet. You're part of it now. And so, with your full belly, soot-kissed fingers, and dreams laced with salt and stone, close your eyes. Rest easy. Sleep deep. And I'll see you next time.